Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a trespassing neighbor rode his dirt bike through my private property without my permission. He ended up crashing on the beach and then tried to sue me. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. I always felt I was lucky to live in a part of South America that had some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. I grew up a few hours away from the ocean, but knew since I was a small child that I also wanted to live as close to the ocean as I could in my adult years. I got what I can only be described as my dream house when I was 27 years old. It was not only right on the beach, but some of the sand was even considered my property. I was really that close. I could come home from work and be on the beach every single day of my life if I wanted to. Plus, you know, every nice day I was out in the water or just on the sand enjoying my life. I don't want to say that I didn't have any problems, but this was the bright spot for me. The only problem I ever had was people not understanding that part of the beach access was my property and they couldn't just set up there or come through. If people were just walking through and did not know, I would just ask them to kindly not do it again and use the normal beach entrance instead. And by the way, Ripe stars, if I still sound a little bit sick, I'm sorry, but it seems like this cold is not going away anytime soon. Anyway, I did not put up a fence because I didn't want to feel closed off from the rest of the beach. It would just feel wrong, so instead I put up signs saying that this is private property. At one point I even tried using ropes as like a guideline of where my property was, but it was a mess of a solution and I removed it pretty fast. Now, the only person that I had a huge issue dealing with was my neighbor. I'm gonna call him Kyle, it just feels like a generic name. Now, Kyle did not care about anybody aside from himself, and it was made clear. Rules for him were a suggestion more than law. What he wanted to do in his own time I had no problem with. I was never big on gossip or getting heavily into other people's businesses. He made things my problem when he would constantly try to use my beach access and hang out on my property. I told him so many times that he could not hang out there and there was a large beach that he could do anything he wanted on. He just said that the beach access should be for all the property owners and not just me. Same thing with my property that overlapped onto the beach. I agree that it sucked, he didn't have any personal beach, but that was not my problem. If I allowed him to do this, it would open me up to letting everybody on my property. Plus, I just didn't like the guy, so I was not inclined to do him any favors. One day, he got the stupid idea to try riding a dirt bike through my beach property. It is called a dirt bike and not a sand bike for a very good reason. I actually know nothing about bikes, but for the fact that he flew off of it and landed hard makes me think that he should not have been doing this in the first place. I saw the whole thing and was mad that he was on my property again, but more concerned that he crashed. Me? Are you okay? Do you need me to call an ambulance for you? Kyle, yes, I need an ambulance, you idiot. I'm not lying here in pain because I think it's fun. Jesus. Me? Okay, relax, I will call one and they will be here in a couple minutes. Kyle, don't think that means you're off the hook for this. Me? Huh? Kyle, I got hurt on your property, so that means you're liable. I'm gonna sue you for everything you have in your pathetic little life. You probably set a trap so this would happen to me. He kept rambling that it was my fault, and even when they were putting him in the ambulance, asking for the police to file a report against me for assault. Now, I was questioning if my neighbor was just a jerk like I thought or completely insane. He was the one that came onto my property without permission, and now he was gonna try and sue me because he got hurt for it. It was not just from the heat of the moment or being in pain either, he really did try to sue me, saying that I should pay to replace the bike and give him money for his pain and suffering. He did not end up having any major injuries, but claimed what I did messed him up psychologically. He refused to handle things outside of court, so I was forced to get a judge and defend myself against his accusations. I just told the truth that while he did fall on my property, I never told him that he could be on it in the first place. I also never set up a trap or anything so that people on it would get hurt as some kind of sick revenge. The court agreed that since he was not invited onto the property, he could not have me liable for any injury he sustained. He got mad when he heard that and started to claim that the law here was backwards and in America I would be going to jail. I don't mean to point out the obvious, buddy, but this is not America. We are in South America, you literally left and moved to this country, so you better deal with how we do things here. I have suspicion that in America though, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble either. As for me paying for the bike, that was also not gonna happen. In fact, him bringing it up caused him to be the one to get in trouble. He admitted in court that he was riding the bike, and there were a lot of signs all over the beach stating what you cannot do. Those signs saying things like no skateboards, no rollerblades, no bikes, no weapons. He could not even blame not knowing the language as an excuse because it has pictures. There's a picture of a bike crossed out with a red X. Did he think that meant bikes were allowed? No, of course not. He just didn't care. The penalty for breaking rules at the beach was pretty intense because it's government owned. He had to pay a huge fine that you can be sure that he started complaining about. He was told to be quiet or he would be placed under arrest for talking out in court. It was great to watch him get knocked down a few pegs. He did not win anything, but in a way, you can say that I did. I won a big old restraining order against my neighbor Kyle, and that meant no more walking onto my property. If he did, I could call the police and have him arrested for it. I also wrote to the government and got them to make signs to tell people that this area of the beach they were approaching was private property and to stay off of it. It really did help a lot and cut down on most people using my beach access. Kyle still lives next door, but from how I hear him talk, I don't think it will be for much longer. He is always yelling on the phone about hating living here and that he has no freedom. And now we have an update of the story, and it reads like this. So about a month after posting this, and I'm happy to say that I see that Kyle's house is currently for sale. I don't know where he's going, but I know that I don't care, and I cannot wait to celebrate him being gone. And here, Ripe Stars, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, since that would help me tremendously. The next one is a dumb customer story. Several years ago, I worked at a gas station with a car wash. This car wash uses a chain that pulls every vehicle through at the same speed, about 25 feet apart. The car wash was the cause of about 80% of all customer grievances. This one was a little bit different. One weekday afternoon, I was stocking shelves when a young woman and an old man come in together. They spot me and say that we need to have a conversation. So I move back behind the counter. Okay, so what can I do for you? I ask with a smile. The woman is about to speak when the old man cuts her off. Your car wash damaged my car, both of ours. Not the first time I've heard this. How so? I ask. The woman chimes in. We were both in the car wash, I was ahead of him, and the car wash pulled his car into the back of mine. Very hard. Immediate red flag, that's impossible. The chain cannot pull one vehicle faster or slower than another, so I tell them exactly that. The woman says, is it possible? Are you calling me a liar? The man asks, interrupting the woman. The woman is visibly annoyed. Well, what I'm saying is, I point out to the man, is that the car wash couldn't have done this. Either you, I make eye contact with the woman, hit the brakes, I look back at the man, or you hit the gas. I did not touch the brakes, the woman said, sounding as though she started to second guess herself. I'm not stupid, the man shot back. I never touched the gas pedal. Now, not to be ageist, but old people are usually the ones who have issues with using the car wash, so he was my prime suspect. Well, thankfully the car wash is lined with cameras, so I will just go rewind the footage and see what happened here. I say matter-of-factly. That's not necessary. We will just have company name pay for the damages, the man says agreeably. Well, company name is gonna wanna review the footage anyway, so I might as well do that now. No, let's not waste any more of our time, the man says nervously. I exaggeratedly raise an eyebrow at him, then glance over at her. She clues in that I'm laying the pressure on him and also looks at him suspiciously. Now it's time to twist the knife. Oh, but surely the camera footage will prove your innocence, sir. Silence. Yep, it's him. So I reviewed the footage, and sure enough, while he was being pulled by the chain at first, he hit the gas and rear-ended her. I came back behind the counter and looked at the woman. Well, it turns out he hit the gas and rear-ended you. Now, even though it happened in the car wash, it was not caused by the car wash, so this matter will have to be solved between the two of you. If you would like the camera footage to provide to insurance, I would be happy to give it to you. I look over at the old man with a smirk. He clearly died a little on the inside, knowing that he is screwed. She thanks me and looks over at him as if to say, pay up, sucker. And yeah, Ripe Stars, this story was so satisfying. This little old lady definitely got revenge on this entitled jerk. If you are in the wrong, you better admit it. Either way, the next one is a pro-revenge story. Warning, a cat dies in this story. Years ago, I used to work with a receptionist in a vet clinic named Margit. Margaret was and still is a very sweet 65-year-old woman who had been at this practice since it was opened some 40 years ago. She always had a smile, a joke, compliments and baked goods for your birthday. She never had an unkind word to say about anyone. She was seriously one of the coolest people I had ever worked with, and she basically knew everyone from our regular clients to our mailman's granddaughter. The only bad thing about Margaret, and this was not her fault, was that she and her family lived next to one of the trashiest, nastiest families I'd ever met that had two even nastier pit bulls. I'm talking nastier than poop that had been hoarded by dung beetles for years nasty. And these dogs were constantly escaping and terrorizing the neighborhood, even trying to get into her house. Margaret had asked them more than once to please keep the dogs contained, especially since she had an elderly fat cat named Smokestack, and these pit bulls had attacked smaller animals before. The family basically told her to rot in hell, that they knew what they were doing, how dare she accuse the breed, yada yada, basically blowing her off. Margaret knew there had been reports filed against her neighbors, but nothing had ever been done about it really. So she made sure to keep Smokestack in the house to keep him safe and was very careful not to let him out. If you'd been paying attention up until this point, you will notice I'm using the word was and had regarding old Smokestack, and it was as awful as you think. 3 weeks before Christmas, Margaret had the day off and was in the garage with Smokestack fiddling with some Christmas decoration. Unbeknownst to her, the pits next door got out and broke through the bottom of her garage door. And once again, ripe stars, I will censor this part a little bit, but it's basically the one where a cat dies. So anyway, they went right for Smokestack before she could even blink. Margaret screamed for help, and it was only when her son and husband came out with a baseball bat that they were able to free Smokestack from the jaws of these dogs. I was working this day, and I will never forget when she came in, crying harder than I'd ever seen anyone cry in my life, clutching poor dying Smokestack in her arms. Her husband had to hold her while we tried to bring Smokestack back, but we couldn't do it. It would have taken a miracle of God and then some, and he passed away, a truly crappy way to go in what should have been the golden years of his fat cat life. Margaret sat there for a while with his mangled body, quietly crying for a while before she finally kissed whatever part of him was still intact and stood up. She told us all, "I've got a job to do, take care of him, girls," and then left. We figured Margaret would take a few days off to be with family and then continue on with life as normal. We figured wrong. Now when I say Margaret knew everyone, I mean everyone. Right after she left the hospital, Margaret gathered herself up and went to the police with pictures of poor old Smokestack and told her story. The same police officers she had watched grow up over the last 20 years, from rowdy middle schoolers she used to help babysit to the officers they were today. They were absolutely shocked to hear what had happened to their surrogate grandma and pushed her case to the front of the line. The case found itself before a judge whose daughter had gone to school with Margaret's daughter. The judge granted an emergency dangerous animal extraction warrant to her neighbors. Of course, there was a hearing within 2 weeks, which I gotta admit was ridiculously fast. The neighbors tried to argue that their dogs were not aggressive. And yeah, that's what these people always try to argue. But I suppose if they argue that the dogs are not necessarily aggressive, how about the owners just go to jail instead? That sounds like a good idea. Anyway, they even went so far as to accuse Margaret of having it out for their family and making it all up. But their argument trickled when the dozens of dangerous animal reports were presented, and finally completely dried out when Margaret presented the surveillance video her grandson had gotten, showing the dogs coming into her property and attacking poor Smokestack. The emergency extraction and humane destruction of her neighbor's dogs was granted. It was Christmas Eve when Margaret heard a knock on her door. She opened it up to see the neighbors standing there, sobbing uncontrollably. They were begging her to stop animal control, that they had these dogs since they were puppies, and how the kids would be devastated and it would ruin Christmas, and if she could find it in her heart to give the dogs another chance. Up until this moment, the neighbors had behaved abominably. They did not offer to fix the garage either. They never apologized for trying to slander her name in court, and hell, they did not even pay for Smokestack to be cremated. At no point had they even shown the slightest shred of remorse for what damage their dogs had done. And as the neighbors stood there, blubbering and whimpering about how this was gonna ruin their Christmas, Margaret looked them straight in the eye and told them, in her calmest voice, "You took away my family, so now I am taking yours." And then shut the door in their face just as animal control pulled up onto the driveway. Margaret was not surprised as she watched the dogs get hauled into the truck and taken away. After all, it was her idea for animal control to take the dogs on Christmas Eve, a perk from having known the AC officer supervisor for years. Margaret even made sure the dogs were euthanized before the outside Christmas lights turned on that night. The family never received the remains, nor did they ever get a chance to bring another animal into their family, as the father proceeded to drunk drive into a telephone pole that same night, killing him instantly. Mom went off the deep end, so CPS picked up the kids by February, and ultimately the house foreclosed in September. Despite how dramatic Smokestack's death was, I would like to think that if the neighbors had shown at least some regret, Margaret might not have gone as far as she did. She was and still is the person to forgive and forget, or maybe she ultimately knew it had to be done to push it to this point of no return before another family lost a member to these irresponsible neighbors. Either way, thank you Margaret for making the world a little bit safer for the pets in this world. And rest in peace Smokestack, hopefully I will see you on the other side with your favorite orange sock and a can of tuna. Well, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that was a super sad story. I didn't really expect that, but I hope the warning that I did in the beginning was strong enough, so in case you didn't want to hear this, you didn't read it. If it wasn't clear enough, I apologize. But either way, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. As you know, usually I don't really read many pro-revenge stories, but I thought this one was definitely a little bit on the special side. Either way, as usual, your feedback is important, so please let me know. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I have a pretty good relationship with my neighbor. He is a stay-at-home dad and so am I. He runs a custom surfboard shop out of his garage and I am a freelance programmer. He has 3 kids, none of which are above the age of 6, and I have 4 kids not older than 7. We do a lot of stuff together, like taking the kids out to the park and stuff while our wives are working. My wife works in a beauty spa and will spend some evenings at the spa. I never really knew what my neighbor's wife did. I'm pretty sure she's in some kind of business or PR work, as she always seems to be out on luncheons or business dinners. I have met his wife a couple of times and she seemed a little out of sorts, like her mind was always up in the clouds or something. On one particular hot summer Sunday, we decided to take the 2 families out to the lake. We would often go to the lake when it was hot, and this was the first time that both of our families in their entirety had gone. Even the neighbor's wife was there. This was when I realized the neighbor's wife might have a little drinking problem. We had arrived about mid-morning and she was already cracking open a bottle of wine. I was not put off by the drinking so much, but rather I could not understand who would drink wine when chilling at the lake. That's what some of the cheaper brands of beers were for. By lunchtime she was pretty buzzed already and well within the throes of being day drunk. I have personally nothing against it. I've been day drunk when out chilling on a Sunday afternoon plenty of times. But this was hardly the appropriate time for it, with 7 kids running around causing mischief. We tried not to draw too much attention to it, but it was hard when the drunker she got, the louder she got, and absolutely obnoxious too. I had caught my neighbor trying to subtly hint to her that she had drunk too much and should calm down. She didn't react very well, and I could see his embarrassment when he saw me. The neighbor's wife went off at me and claiming that I was spying on them. Of course, that was not the case. They were standing right where the beer cooler was. The whole ordeal put a sour mood on the afternoon, but at least the kids were still having fun. That was until about mid-afternoon when I hear panic and screaming coming from the lake. When me and the neighbor rushed over, we found that his youngest, a 3-year-old little girl, had ventured out too far on a floaty. With her elder siblings fooling around, they had accidentally tipped her into the lake. I was the first one to reach her, being the closest at the time, and I hauled her back to shore and started helping her cough up all the lake water she had inhaled. I did this by leaning her over my leg and patting her back. She was fine once she had thrown up half the lake. She was all red-faced, puffy-cheeked and snot all over the place, crying for mommy and daddy. That was when the neighbor's wife finally took notice and started pitching a fit. Screaming and yelling. I thought she was just hysterical from seeing her daughter nearly drown, but no, she was screaming and yelling at me. She was declaring that I had hurt her daughter and that someone should call the police. It pretty much drew the attention of the entire lake, and her husband was trying to calm her down, telling her that I had helped save her daughter from drowning. I guess she was too inebriated to understand because she went on to get her cell phone to call the police on me, all the while shouting at me until I was red in the face. By the time the cops had arrived, the neighbor's wife had drawn quite the gathering, every single one of them trying to tell the silly woman that I had helped save her daughter from drowning. There were even a couple of them showing videos they had taken with their cell phones. I don't know how much proof she wanted, but it would seem nothing short of God himself coming down from heaven to tell her would suffice. The cops pretty much took statements from everyone, which took up the rest of the day as there were quite a few witnesses. I still had to go down to the station to give a statement, but luckily my wife can drive, so the kids were not put out too much. After spending the next hour at the station, I finally got to go home. The police were very nice and polite and kept apologizing, telling me that this was all part of the protocol when someone makes accusations. They had enough evidence to know that I was not harming the young girl and that I should be commended for saving her life. The neighbor's wife still did not see it that way and was waiting to ambush me when I got home. She told me that she was gonna make sure I go away for a long time and that perverts like me should be strung up by my testicles. I tried not to rise to the bait, but it was so hard in the face of someone so obnoxious and, well, Karen-like. I told her that next time I would just let her kid drown unless she wanted me to go swimming in after her. I'm not proud of what I said, but I was tired. My neighbor did his best to apologize for his wife's behavior. He even said that he was having doubts about the relationship. He was trying to get her to go to AA and to see reason, but she was being very difficult. About a month or so later, social services called around my neighbors. Apparently, that is standard practice when a child's life is put at risk, and I guess they didn't like the statements people had written about the situation. I know because, like I said, my neighbor still talks to me, unlike his wife, who was now just flat out blanking me. So much so that she nearly ran me over when she was backing out of her driveway. I was surprised when my neighbor asked me to provide a witness statement to be a character witness for him. Of course, I obliged wholeheartedly and told social services the truth as I saw it. I knew him to be a great dad who was caring and loving and doted constantly on his children. I thought this would be a great opportunity to sabotage the neighbor's wife, but then that would not make me any better than her. So again, I told the truth, which in of itself was pretty damning. I think that social must have given them an ultimatum, one to which my neighbor's wife probably did not like or take seriously. As by the end of summer, the two were separated. Me and my wife helped him out whenever we can, which is easy when I work from home. I haven't seen the neighbor's ex-wife in some time now. The last I heard, she was deemed unfit to care for the kids and she was only allowed supervised contact. I hope that she has taken this lesson to heart and seeks the help she needs to get her family back. I know that my neighbor still loves her and would take her back in a heartbeat just so long as she lays off the alcohol and comes back up from the steep slope into turning into a Karen. And yeah, ripe stars, to be honest, even though this was a crazy Karen, my heart definitely goes out to that family. I hope this woman can deal with the devil that is alcohol and beat this addiction so she can come back to her kids and hopefully be a better mom. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.